Afternoon. Thank you. Now you can all go back to sleep. So, so the joy of being in an afternoon session is that I can just about say anything that I want, and you guys won't take it amiss. So, taking that liberty, first let me thank the SBIOA for inviting me here to talk today on this extremely vital topic. Uh, in fact, my colleague V. Sridhar, a brilliant mind who had termed the demonetization just a few days after it came into effect a monumental blunder, was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, for personal reasons, he couldn't be here. It's our loss that he is not here today. But I'll try and fill in whatever way that I can. The topic, preserving unity in diversity, has not come a day soon. And I'm sure that this issue will be debated across the country in various fora, including the liberal, left-wing, right-wing, and from fascist perspectives. But you have to also remember that each of these perspectives, every one of these, including the fascists, including the left, including the right, all have an audience. And I'm not sure any longer if a good oration or a speech is going to convert any one of you. I'm pretty sure that it doesn't. But if it helps initiate a discussion at some level on the need to preserve diversity, I think I'll have done my job. From what I understand, this forum is a place to speak upon issues without the fear of being ridiculed. Some of my thoughts may not be in conformity with a lot of things that is being done in schools in the name of education. So I would first try to highlight some of that, and then talk about a little bit about our own experiences with diversity, and then end it there. I'm only throwing a few ideas in an attempt to initiate a discussion. So the problem is, the inherent problem with introspection, that is when we look at unity as a diversity as a concept in India, is that it throws up far too many things that we need to discuss. And unfortunately, we may not be comfortable with discussing all of those issues. So with that very elaborate introduction on what I'm going to say, let me start with the statement that some of you will come up with counter-arguments. Schools are the graveyards of diversity. Let me repeat that again. Schools are the graveyards of diversity. Why do I say this? I am a Malayali by birth, and I went to a school in Pollachi, in Tamil Nadu. For years, I was called a Malayalatan, and I hated it. I wanted to be considered a Tamilian. I thought that was something to aspire to, being a Tamilian, talking the way a Tamil speaks Tamil, being one of them. That was my objective. Most of the students were Tamils, and that is why there was also this rhyme, I don't know if it is used in schools here against Malayali students. Malayalathan, Kududuthan, Tadiyeduthan, Otambudithan. Something to that effect. I felt really small hearing these things, and I thought I was different from these people. That's why I start by saying that schools are the graveyards of diversity. And again, I went to Kerala, back to Kerala for my plus 2 education and later on college. And in Kerala, in my pre-university times, I was called I studied in a school in Pollachi, so I was called Pollachi. And then Pollachi was famous for tomatoes, so I was called a Takali. So this essentially is a small part of the problem that we face today. We are not used to people different from us. We are not used to people who look like us, but unfortunately do not speak the same tongue. We don't like the fact when somebody else does something slightly differently, wears a pottu, a guy wearing a pottu is not acceptable to us. uh, or wears a skull cap. I think that's a strict no-no in today's schools. Or does something different from the rest of the class. Teachers do not actively seek out these guys and do not protect them from the ridicule that they undergo. This is just the external objects that I am talking about. Hundreds of internal things. Caste is an important thing in any particular school classroom. How difficult it will be for a student who is from the backward communities, from the SC, from the ST communities, so to sit in a class where everybody is able to speak proper English. How difficult is it for a student from any one of these backward communities to have a lunchbox with some meat in it? Because that is what he's used to eating. That is why I say schools are the graveyards of diversity, and you as teachers, I'm not particularly referring to SBIOA or any other school in particular, are not doing anything to stop this grave injustice. To the extent that one of my students who now works for Indian Express has written an elaborate article just a few days back talking about this very same issue. Her name is Diya Rekhi, and I want to read it out because a lot of you will not have seen this because some of you are from Coimbatore, Tiruchi, Madurai, and Ernakulam, I understand. So here it goes. The headline is, discrimination can begin with chi chicken in a child's dabba. Ashraf Beg dreaded the lunch break at school, not because he didn't have food to eat or because he didn't enjoy his mother's cooking, but rather because the moment he opened his lunchbox, most of his friends would make a fuss. Some would crinkle their noses, others would say yuck or chi, while still others would desert him and move to the other end of the classroom, complaining of the smell, leaving him to eat all alone. After this happened repeatedly, he went home one day and told his mother to stop sending non-vegetarian food and pack only vegetarian fare in a bid to be one among the group. See where diversity is taking us. Luckily for Ashraf, his teacher at the well-known school in Chennai realized something was amiss. Again, the teacher's name is changed. I noticed Ashraf has gotten very quiet and was extremely hesitant to do anything in class. The teacher said, one day I brought up food habits and asked how many children were vegetarian. Nearly all hands went up. And that again tells us a lot about what diversity are we talking about in the elite schools of not just Chennai, but across this nation. When I asked who all were non-vegetarian, I noticed Ashraf was looking around nervously and didn't raise his hand. Then one of the children pointed at him and said he ate chicken and mutton and made a disgusted face. Now, how did the teacher handle it? I think the teacher did the right thing. It was at this point the teacher intervened to diffuse the situation by saying that she also ate chicken and mutton, and then it is nothing to be ashamed of. Now, a lot of experts believe that the teachers play an important role in ensuring that children from minorities or marginalized communities are not discriminated against. Further, teachers themselves should not reinforce stereotypes and create a divide among children based on a community or linguistic lines. Now, it's also a fact that many schools discourage parents from sending non-vegetarian food to school. While it may not be explicitly stated, it's often understood as an unsaid rule among parents. Now see, there is this huge discussion in this country about Narendra Modi defining our diet. Come, think about it for a moment. We the so-called liberals, we the teachers, we the creators of tomorrow, what are we doing to prevent stereotypes from happening, to encourage diversity in our own classrooms? We do nothing. If this is the rule, and this is an unsaid rule, there are rules and there are unsaid rules. We all know where there are unsaid rules and where there are stated rules. If this is the unsaid rule, how are we going to counter it? I don't see any of us having the courage to handle unsaid rules. About the rules that are written down, we can fight. You have to also understand that this school itself is State Bank Officers Association schools, and you literally have the right, the prerogative, and the duty to see to that this kind of discrimination does not exist in your schools. For a moment, I'm not saying this exists in your schools. I'm only saying if it is not there, well and good. If it exists, it's a huge problem. The other thing is that how are we promoting diversity in our schools? Classrooms. I see with kids in my own classroom at the Asian College of Journalism, I mean, it's from all over India. Students come from all over India, the Asian College of Journalism. I see that there is not the kind of curiosity about a fellow colleague whose name sounds different from our own, from a Suresh or Ramesh or normal North Indian names and stuff. There is no curiosity to find out about, say, Tibetan, about, say, somebody from Nepal, about, say, somebody from Bhutan, and of course, Maldives and all that. Well represented at the Asian College of Journalism. I do not find the same kind of curiosity to find out where these people are from. How do they fit into my society? How are they important? What do they add to my life? And believe me when I say that every one of these individuals have a lot to add to all our lives, to enrich it, to make it different from what it already is, to make us learn the importance of a different human being, different in the sense that he or she speaks a different language, he or she follows different customs and rituals, and he or she may look different from all of us. Everyone teaches us a lot of these things. The other thing that I've seen in both South Indian and North Indian schools is that there's a very clear North-South divide. You will notice that those speaking Tamil will be in one group, others speaking in Malayalam will be in another group, and those speaking in Hindi will be sticking together. And while this may not lead to discrimination of any kind, it only darkens the line of difference where they tend to cling to their groups and are averse to interacting with others. There are a lot of reasons why this happens, because children might be essentially imitating what they see at home. At home, if the conversation is derogatory about a Muslim, derogatory about a Sikh, derogatory about somebody who practices a religion different from yours, it will reflect in your mentality, in your child's mentality, and what the child wants to do or does finally in school. I think the Parent Teachers Association, along with the teachers here, should take this up very seriously, because this is the most critical juncture of our lives. As a nation, where we are headed to depends on what we do at this moment of time, and all of this starts in our schools. And it is not just about what we eat, how we look, what we wear, and where we come from. It's also about the caste that you belong to. In 2014, Human Rights Watch published a report. They say we are dirty, denying an education to India's marginalized. It examines the obstacles preventing children from certain backgrounds from attending school and the government's failure to address the problem. The report established that discrimination remains a major factor affecting access to education for children from marginalized communities, including Dalits, tribal groups, and Muslims. The report stated that while nearly all primary school children are enrolled in school, many millions do not actually attend classes. They said this is often because their caste ethnicity, economic condition, religion, or gender acts as a barrier to education. The report went on to find that discrimination takes various forms. These included teachers asking Dalit children to sit separately, making insulting remarks about Muslims and tribal students, and village authorities not responding when girls are kept away from the classroom. Now, I also teach at a place called the Banyan Academy for Leadership in Mental Health. I teach a paper called Politics. As part of that paper, I asked students to write what their interaction with authority was. Their interaction with authority, any authority. It can be a licensing authority, it can be the police, it can be the school, it can be anything that they wanted to write about. And one particular child wrote, she's not a child any longer, she's probably 20. She writes this very difficult thing to write, actually, to even go back and think about, that had me thinking. She's from Nagpur. She went to school in Nagpur, to a Jesuit school, where she did not realize what her caste was, where she came from, and all of that. And then she gets accepted to an undergrad course in Nagpur, to a college. And week one of that course in college, the entire class is summoned in front of the principal's chamber, and some of the students' names are called out, and they are asked to stand in a separate line. And the principal comes out and tells these students standing in a separate line, it's a smaller line, telling them that they are a drag on the society. The college had singled out students belonging to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. And the principal is there standing right in front of them, and he's trying to tell them that they are a drag on the society, they are a drag on this country. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, diversity has worked in India traditionally and how it is working now. How much of pain that student would have undergone, or all the students in that line would have undergone, that the child remembers to this day and remembers to write that one story that has affected her life. How many interactions with authority would a 21-year-old have had to remember to write this one story, picking out from all the others, from a traffic violation to an admission process, to traveling from Nagpur to Chennai to find a place to stay, all of those things. And finally, she picks this one story to write. This is the state of diversity in India, and it is incumbent upon us to do whatever we can to not leave it the way it is. And again, while the degree of discrimination in private schools may not be as blatant as what is faced in villages, it is hard to deny its existence. I'm reading out from the HRW report. Parents have an important role to play in order to ensure that their children stop looking at those with different religious and cultural beliefs as the other, but rather embrace the difference and revel in the opportunity of knowing someone with a different belief system. I don't see much religious discrimination among children, but if a certain idea is ingrained in their mind at a young age, it tends to stay with them even as adults. The difference comes out more as an adult, especially among people who are very rigid about their beliefs and consider others with a different belief system as impure. Again, I'm reading out from the same report. Now you see, how does a child who grew up in these circumstances accept the so-called Indian unity in diversity? What are you asking this child to accept? What are you asking in a scheduled caste child? What are you asking a scheduled tribe child to accept? Are you trying to tell him or her that they belong to the lower strata of society and they have to remain there and follow the rules of Manu established thousands of years ago, that there is a caste and you cannot cross the boundaries of that caste? Is that what the unity in diversity that we are looking at? Schools are the graveyards of the concept of unity in diversity. the kind of discrimination that every child faces in school merely because he's different, merely because he decides to question a teacher's ability or an idea, that is enough to see the child as different, to treat the child with contempt to the extent that the child does not want to go to school at all. Dropouts, ladies and gentlemen, does not happen because Government of India doesn't have enough programs. Dropouts happen more because you have teachers who do not understand, do not empathize with children. Now, why are schools the graveyards? It starts with something very simple as the desire to standardize. We love standardization, don't we? And how does this standardization start, even if it's very unconscious? And I believe it starts with your insistence on the children wearing a uniform. Why should school students wear a uniform? From uniform to uniformity, there are two different words. The concept is very different. The distance between uniform and uniformity is not much. When you force a child to wear a uniform and you force a school to look the same, you are trying to tell something which goes far beyond the child wearing a uniform. You want to bring in a kind of uniformity. Of course, there are benefits. I don't deny the benefits of turning out in a uniform. But in this today's day and age, there is a problem which starts with you wearing a uniform, you forcing a child to wear a uniform. I'm not talking about the uniform that you guys are wearing. That's your fate. But the uniform that you force a child to wear, for me, it's a problem because it reveals a certain mindset, the mindset which says that every child in a school, every child in a classroom has to conform to a certain standard. And that standard is not about educational achievement. It's not about bringing out the genius in a child. It is about making sure that you all look the same. There is an inherent problem in that. If schools do not realize it today, I don't know when they will realize it. Now, if you seek uniformity, you cannot have also Ashraf eat chicken in your classroom or anywhere else for that matter. From what I see, if you also don't have diversity in your staff room, if you don't have people of varying backgrounds in your staff room, it will reflect on the quality of education that you provide. The answers to this dilemma that we face lie in the questions that were actually answered about 70 years ago. We have been here. We have done this. And we have conquered this. And we are going back to the same things again and again. And that is the problem, ladies and gentlemen, that happens without an adequate knowledge and an adequate understanding of the history that we have gone through. Now, what am I talking about? It's as simple as, how was this nation born? How was the freedom struggle managed? Who fought for our freedom? What is the one thing that unites us Indians? Now, just to refresh all of you, because it's been a good afternoon of good lunch, we have, 1.3 billion people. We have 23 major languages, 22 distinct dialects, and people belonging to every ethnic extraction known to humanity live in India. So what united us? Is it caste? Is it religion? Is it creed? Is it color? Is it our culture? Is it our conviction? Is it our cuisine? Is it our customs? Or even our costume? And the answer actually is none of these. What did you need to do to be part of gaining India's freedom? All that you needed to do was to oppose the British. You can be black, you can be brown, you can be yellow, you can be of any color, you can be of Negroid extraction that you see in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. You can be the people who are small framed, like you see in the Lakshadweep Islands. You can be people with Mongoloid features, as we see in most of Northeast India. You can be the tall Pathans that you see in Kashmir. You can be the normal South Indians. For us, normal is being South Indian, right? So we can be the normal South Indians and still fight the British. We can have different languages, we can have different castes, we can have different creeds, we can have different customs, we can even have different cuisines. But what we stood for and what united us was just this one concept of fighting the British. That's it. Why are we Indians? To be an Indian, what should you do? To be an Indian, you had to oppose the British. End of story. How do you oppose the British? Again, Gandhi's non-violence has the answer for all these things. All that you need to do is to sit in your own homes. You don't need to get out, lead a protest. You don't need to get arrested. You don't need to be jailed to oppose the British. All you needed to do is to just be in your homes and do the charka. Weave a piece of cloth. The moment you weave a piece of cloth and you produce a meter or 2 meters of cloth, from that you become against the British. That's all it took for us as Indians to become together. We became Indian not because of anything that we had in common. The only thing that remained common for us was the fact that we fought the British. So please remember that. We are Indians, or not Tamilians, not Malayalis, not Kannadigas, and not Telugus, because we chose to be that way. And it starts at the freedom struggle, and we were taught all of these things right from the freedom struggle. Now, I mentioned this, different languages, different castes and all. I'll just give one simple example. It was the famous poet Iqbal who sang Sare Jahan Se Acha at one point of Hindustan Hamara. That was a song that was a clarion call to the people of this country to unite against the British. Now, was that song sung in Tamil Nadu? No. You start singing in Hindi, in any era in Tamil Nadu, there will be no national struggle here. Then there will be a struggle against Hindi. Everything will get diverted. At that time, there was this guy called Bharatiyar who sang. Well, his song was Parukulle Nalanadu in Bharatanadu. So the struggle against the British was not based on one language, was not based on any single criteria. There were so many strands to it. We all came together because we thought we were Indians. It is that feeling, ladies and gentlemen, which is dying. And why is it dying? Because at no point in our history have we been this different, and at no point in our history have we tried to magnify our own differences. Even at that time, when the inclusive political nationalism was defining the narrative of Indian politics, there were attempts, as is being done today, to unite people using religion. It was not called religion at that point of time. Using religion would have been a strict no-no, so it was called cultural nationalism. We hear a lot of that phrase even today. It is making a comeback. It is nothing but an excuse to bring in religion into the discourse of national unity, uniting people in the name of the religion, one culture. We are not one culture, ladies and gentlemen. We are not one religion, ladies and gentlemen. We are a sum of all these things. Let us remember that. Now, in the 1930s, this has started. I mean, like, lot of these guys were apologists of the British. One guy even, in fact, was incarcerated in the Andaman prison, and he got out by writing an apology to the British Empire. And finally, when the Vajpayee government came to power, he, in fact, had a portrait of himself hung in the parliament right opposite from the Mahatma. His name is Savarkar. Now, our key to preserving our diversity in the unity in diversity lies in this example of the freedom struggle. We have a lot of differences. How do we manage the differences? We move in what is called consensus. Today, what is lacking in the Indian Parliament, today is what is lacking across the country is this consensus. Yes, you have the right to your own beliefs, but then I have the right to my own beliefs. We will disagree on a lot of things, but we agree on the core of the being of this nation. When that is questioned, when there cannot be any discussion on the nature of those questions, that is when we have the biggest question facing the unity of this country and the preservation of its diversity. Now, I just go back to a letter that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru wrote on 1st March 1950, and I'll end with this. And of course, the biggest problem of those days was the most obvious one, which is the Hindu-Muslim divide, the Hindu riots, the Hindu-Muslim riots of that time, the partition and stuff. So Nehru writes, and I quote, "There is a tendency among some of us to demand loyalty from the Muslims in India." Does it sound very familiar? We are doing the same thing today. And to condemn tendencies amongst them which may be pro-Pakistani. Now, Nehru goes on to write, loyalty is not produced to order or by fear. It comes as a natural growth from circumstances which make loyalty not only a sentiment which applies to one, but also profitable in the long run. We have to produce conditions which lead to the sentiment being produced. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful, inspiring speech and telling us that unity in diversity is the most powerful heritage we can hand over to our future generations. What better inheritance can our children think of? Now the floor is open for questions. Anybody who would like to present the questions can present questions to our Honorable Speaker.